On the other side of the Atlantic, Allied forces converged to prepare for an equally decisive breakthrough in the liberation of Europe.
For the Allies, the D-Day landings represented the success or failure of the entire war.
But the outcome really rested on a knife edge.
November 1943. Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill meet in Tehran to plan Operation Overlord, the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. Churchill warns of the challenges that await them.
The British had learned firsthand how capable, how effective a fighting force the Wehrmacht was.
Britain's experience is chastening. Evacuated from Dunkirk in 1940, driven from Norway and Greece. Yet despite the dangers, the Allies determined to risk everything on a full-scale cross-channel invasion into the teeth of the Nazi defenses.
In order for D-Day to succeed, it required 4 distinct events to happen. First, the Allies needed the momentum of manpower and equipment to make it to the beach and continue to reinforce the beachhead once the landings were secure. Secondly was air supremacy. The Allies had to prevent the Germans from reinforcing their positions on the beachhead. Also, the Allies needed a major Soviet offensive so that Germany would be sandwiched between 2 invading armies. And finally, the element of surprise. If the Germans had been aware that the invasion was coming, it would have certainly failed.
To win the intelligence war, the Allies launched Operation Fortitude.
Operation Fortitude stands to the present day as arguably the greatest deception plan in modern warfare.
In an audacious act of misdirection, a decoy army of 11 ghost divisions, figureheaded by General Patton, assembles opposite Calais.
They had to really trick the German high command into thinking that Calais, the shortest route across the Channel, was the way that the invasion was going to be mounted. It had dummy tanks, dummy airstrips, dummy hangars, and they let German reconnaissance aircraft fly over these areas. Say, oh, here's a huge army. This is clearly where they're going to put their main effort.
With Fortitude blinding the Axis, the real invasion force secretly assembles. 9.5 million tons of supplies, 4,000 amphibious vessels, and over 1.5 million troops. The man charged with the immense logistical challenge of the landings is British naval mastermind Sir Bertram Ramsay.
Sir Bertram Ramsay's plan was meticulous, it was complex, it was rehearsed, and it was thorough in every way.
The plan is astonishing. Almost 7,000 vessels will be loaded with men and supplies and moved in secret to the assembly points. At a predetermined time, they will navigate through narrow channels cleared of mines towards enemy shores through unpredictable seas. Simultaneously, naval screens will be mounted to protect against Axis counterattacks.
The scope and depth of it, it's just off the scale. Me personally, I've been involved in planning for things like Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, the early pieces of it, and even that, with big computers and lots of smart guys working it was daunting then.
Getting the Allied forces to the beachheads is just the start. Awaiting them is Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a defensive network 1,600 miles long and considered by the Führer as unbreachable.
It's this combination of everything from millions of mines, specific defenses designed to rip the bottom of a landing craft. Then you get to machine gun bunkers with interlocking fires, 6-inch cannons, you name it. It's just a nasty, nasty piece of work.
You know, there were trained troops who've been there for years, sighting every avenue of approach off the beach. You know there are going to be massive counterattacks. The Germans are masters at that, so there's just so much uncertainty.
The window of opportunity is desperately narrow. Supreme Allied Commander Eisenhower sets the date. June 5th, 1944.
Once Eisenhower made the decision, it was irrevocable. There was no plan B. This was it, go for broke. Either the invasion would succeed or the invasion attempt would have to be put off indefinitely.
Dwight Eisenhower sat down and wrote a little note taking blame for the failure of the landings that he was prepared to deliver if it did fail. No one on the Allied side saw this as a sure thing.
As the Allies bombed the French infrastructure connecting Normandy to the east, 3 million servicemen are locked away from the population. Coastal towns are locked down. The fate of the world hangs in the balance. After an agonizing 24-hour delay due to bad weather, Overlord, the most important Allied operation of World War II, is set in motion. Before the Armada embarks for Normandy, the Allies launch one final masterclass of deception. To convince the Germans that Calais is the invasion site, British bombers circle at low altitude, dropping tons of metallic chaff into the air.
This created a huge radar registry for the Germans, and this phantom army that has been constructed in their minds through documents and fake bases, now it starts to come alive.
Totally threw the German defensive planning, it threw it into disarray.
With the misdirection campaign underway, the invasion force heads towards its targets. 5 beachheads and a cliff-top gun emplacement at Pointe du Hoc. Ahead of the transports, an aerial and naval barrage pounds the coastal defenses. Despite the assault, the men on the landing craft come under ferocious German fire.
It was confusing. The German planes were going right over us. There was these bombs and guns were going off and everything else.
Some of them boats, they got hit by bombs already. And all you could see is like, you don't know who they were. See guys laying in the water, some with limbs off and arms. It was more than being frightened on the boats. Some guys were crying a little bit. Some guys was even urinating.
We were all nervous. Everybody was. But there's nothing you could do about it. You knew what you had to do, and it had to be done.
Charles Barley and Michael Vernillo are among the first to hit Omaha, the most heavily defended German position.
A lot of guys were in a bunch getting off the boat, and they were killed instantly, you might as well say. When we got into the water was up to my stomach. I said to myself, I said, "Goodbye, Charlie, you're gone." And it was really a terrible feeling in the water. You see the bodies laying around and they couldn't identify them. It was really, really nasty, really bloody.
Those fortunate enough to make it off the boats, the scene they would have confronted, it's almost unimaginable. They would have been suffering still from seasickness. They would have heard the whirring of bullets above their heads. They would have seen in front of them dead and dying American soldiers. But it was more than chaos. It was deadly chaos.
As the Allies continue to land against merciless German fire, the casualty rate soars. But after 15 hours of fighting, all beachheads are taken, with Pointe du Hoc falling the following day. The Allies suffer 10,000 casualties, but it is bloodshed achieving the almost impossible. They have a foothold in Nazi-occupied Europe.
For Hitler, this was the nightmare come to pass.
We basically, signed the death certificate of Nazi Germany on June 6, 1944.
After weeks and weeks of being bottled up in the Normandy beachhead, the breakout that occurred exceeded expectations.